Michelangelo is really a great story on willpower and self-control. He was beaten severely when he was a young kid by his father. His father wanted him to pursue a more noble profession, a more lucrative profession. And Michelangelo wanted to be a sculptor. And his father beat him. And his father tried to get him off course. And Michelangelo said, no, I want to be a sculptor. And finally, through his grit and perseverance and unrelentingness, Michelangelo's father said, you know what, okay, fine. You're 14 years old. I'm going to allow you to go to apprentice with a Florentine master, and he will help you become a sculptor. And Michelangelo moved to Florence, and he started to study, and he started to practice. And again, this is a story of self-discipline and world-class willpower. And through his mastery, and through his practice, and through his suffering, and through his persistence, and through his focus, all of these great lost traits that are no longer celebrated in this world where all too often people are card-carrying members of the cult of mediocrity. Through this practice, through this devotion, he became well known. He became known far and wide. He created the beautiful sculptor David. If you go to Museum of Academia in Florence, you will see David. You will see some of his other masterpieces. And part of that whole region started to honor the way that Michelangelo was appearing and performing as a sculptor. Because of his mastery, a lot of the other artists, like Raphael and the Renaissance painters, became jealous. And so they devised a very elaborate and interesting plan to discredit and to ridicule Michelangelo. And Michelangelo's peers went to the Pope, who was Julius II. And they said to the Pope, why don't you get Michelangelo to paint the Sistine Chapel? And the Pope said, sounds good. And so the Pope went over to Michelangelo and said, I want you to restore the greatness of Rome. And the greatness of Rome is now on your shoulders because I want you to paint the Sistine Chapel. And I want you to make it a masterpiece that holds the world in awe when they see it. And Michelangelo replied to the Pope, he said, you know, I'm not a painter. And I've never painted. I'm a sculptor. But Julius II was very persistent, and eventually Michelangelo said, fine, I'm going to agree. And over 4 years, 4 hard years, 4 years that took incredible self-control, incredible grit. We're going to talk about grit in this webinar. Incredible focus, incredible discipline. Michelangelo created the Sistine Chapel. Now, let's put this into perspective. I mean, Michelangelo had never painted fresco before. Michelangelo had to paint something on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel that people standing many feet below could look up at and see in great detail. Michelangelo dealt with the fact that the painting on the Sistine Chapel was moldy. There were paint issues. He had to deal with the fact that the Pope was very ill and he thought he might not get paid. He actually developed this incredible elaborate system of scaffolding, which allowed him to paint backwards for 4 years on the Sistine Chapel, and he damaged his back in the process, but he did it for the art, he did it for the discipline, he did it for what it made of him, he did it for his commitment, because the great artists and the great performers are much less about ego and applause and money, and they do their work for what it makes of them as human beings. And after 4 years, Michelangelo's eyesight was so damaged from looking at the images on the Sistine Chapel that he suffered permanent eye damage. But like I said, once he was finished, the world was awestruck at what he created. And now 20 million people a year go to the Vatican and they do experience this breathtaking work of artistry and human ingenuity constructed by an ordinary man who exercised world-class willpower named Michelangelo. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I guess what I'm suggesting to you is one of the fundamental points. The myth of the talented genius, the myth of the gifted genius, is nothing more than a lie society has sold you. I don't know if I expressed that clearly, but what I'm trying to suggest to you is the world says the Michelangelos and the Beckhams and the Jay-Z's and the great entrepreneurs, the Carlos Slims, the Warren Buffetts, the Jack Dorseys, the founder of Twitter, the Jeff Bezoses, the founder of Amazon, the Mozarts and the Picassos and the Bachs. Society teaches us and trains us that these people are somehow born with special talents. And what I'm here to remind you, with deep respect for all 25,000 or 24,922 of you on this webinar from around the world, is that is a lie that society has sold us to keep us small. And if you look at the science, and science coming out right now is indisputable. We're going to get into that science. But what science says is genius is much less about your genetics and much more about your self-control and your discipline. Genius is much less about natural talent and much more about practice, persistence, focus, grit, dealing with suffering, dealing with failure, dealing with laughter. While the rest of the world thinks you should stop, genius is much more about continuing practice, developing your craft.
We all want to be able to change the way we feel, and that's what I spend my life showing people how to do. And what most people don't know is emotion is created by motion. The way you move determines the way you feel. You have 80 different muscles in your face, 80. For most people, this is the largest area of unemployment in the country. They use the face the same way, they feel the same emotions over and over and over again. So what I was saying is I have this deal with myself called priming. Every day I say, look, you got to have 10 minutes for yourself. You don't have 10 minutes for yourself, you don't have a life. And I'm not going to hope I feel good. I just got back 6 countries in 12 days. I was in India 2 days ago.
Wow.
And I woke up here and feeling like somebody ran me over with a truck.
But you got yourself psyched up.
But the way I did it is I do this process. It's 10 minutes, I put some music on, I do this massive change in my breathing so it radically changes the way I feel. And then I do this 3-step process. First, I do 3 minutes of gratitude where I think of 3 things I'm really grateful for, and I don't think of it over there, I feel it. And the reason is, when you're grateful, you can't be worried. You can't be fearful. When you're grateful, you can't be angry. And anger and fear are what screw people up most in their relationships, in their life, in their business. So I wire myself. I was saying to you that most people want to be happy, but their habit is to be worried or pissed off or frustrated or stressed. And so they've got a highway to stress and they got a dirt road to happiness. So I wire myself. I've got a highway to gratitude, which changes all your emotions. And then I do a 3-minute process of kind of a prayer for my family and friends. And then I do a 3-minute process of the top 3 things I want to accomplish. I see it as done and I feel it. I'm done in 10 minutes. So sometimes I go 20. But my deal is 10, so there's no excuse not to do it.
You know what? I think it's a great way to kind of set the tone for the day.
It does. It changes. Listen, we've all had times when you snapped at somebody and you felt bad because it wasn't them, it was the state you're in, right? Well, there's no excuse for that. If you prime yourself, you set yourself up. They've done studies where they go to people and they have a man walk up to you and say, could you hold this for me? He hands you a cup of coffee. It's an actor. And then he takes something out of his pocket, then he takes it back and says, thank you. 100 people, they do it with iced coffee. 100 people do it with hot coffee. 45 minutes later, another actor comes by and says, listen, we're doing this little test for $5. Would you read this 3 paragraphs and answer 3 questions? Most people say yes. It's a little story. The questions are about the character. What's the character like? 80% of the people that got iced coffee say the person is cold and mean.
Wow.
81% of the people that got hot coffee say the person is warm and gentle or nice. That's how much we can be primed by our environment. We think we're just feeling what we're feeling, but our environment, if we don't take control of our environment, it takes control of us.
Why do so few of us master things? Well, last week I had the opportunity of spending some time with an instructor, a golf instructor, Michael, and he and I were sitting down and having a conversation together. And he said, you know, the game of golf is very annoying and very frustrating. I said, tell me why. He says, well, because it's going an 80-mile-an-hour swing and you're supposed to hit the small ball and all the small little angles could dictate which direction the ball's going to go. So you could really drive yourself nuts. So I said, when does one really start enjoying the game of golf? I wanted to hear his answer. Listen to what he told me. He said, one learns and enjoys the game of golf when you know why the ball went where it went. I said, elaborate. He said, as an amateur, you get up and you try to hit the ball, you miss the ball, right? And if you make a contact, it goes right, it goes left, it goes all over the place. And you want, how come it went to that place? He says, once you learn why the ball is going to the right and why the ball is going to the left, you get to actually enjoy it because your next swing, you just make a minor adjustment. Maybe it's your shoulders. Maybe it's your back not being straight. Maybe your head's moving more than 2 or 3 inches. Maybe your weight is on your heels instead of your toes, 70-30. Maybe you're not 60-40 on your back foot. Maybe the ball's not aligned the right with your left foot if you're hitting a driver. All of these things you think about. He says, well, once you figure that out, you actually get a chance to enjoy the game. And I said, you know what? That's exactly what it is to be an entrepreneur and a businessman. You know, you sit there and you wonder, why is this thing not working for me? And you know typically what it is in business? It's one small minor adjustment you got to make and boom, you start enjoying the game again. So you don't mind if a certain number is going lower or higher, but you know why that thing's going lower or higher is because of this. This concept is true in many aspects of our lives. You could say my lower back is having problems. I really have a hard time with my lower back. And so you go out and work on your lower back. And you hire a personal trainer, say that has nothing to do with your lower back. Your hamstrings are weak, your abs are weak. You need to work on your abs and your hamstring. You gotta be kidding me. Say my marriage is not working out, it's because of, you know, our finances, because of this. You go talk to somebody and they say, no, it's because of communication. You know, my finances are not working out, it's because of my income. No, it's because you're spending too much money with the barbecues you do every other weekend, a beer. You're spending $300 every time, that's $600 right there. But once you figure out why it is that you're having those challenges you're having, and you make minor little tweaks here and there, you start really enjoying the game of life. And it just becomes so effortless to you. And you know who could do that? Anybody. You just got to figure out what those tweaks are they need to make.